Void Mage Gamer is now partnered with Flipside Gaming, so you can use the promo code on their website, all caps, Void Mage, to get 10% off all orders $10 or more. It's a great way that you can support both Flipside Gaming and Void Mage Gamer's channel. Hello guys, welcome back to another top 10 Commander video. This time we're going to be finishing up the two color pairings, going with Simic, and there's a lot of awesome Simic cards. Very good option for Commander. You have a lot of good control, a lot of good utility, and there are a bunch of different strategies that you can go with. This is a post-Ravnica Allegiance list, so anything after that is unknown to me. If we're going to talk about honorable mentions, I think we have some pretty good creatures that synergize with +1/+1 counters but don't necessarily work out that well in other decks, such as Master Biomancer, Fathom Mage. While these could be good in other decks, the way to abuse them is in +1/+1 counter strategies, and you're going to see some other cards that didn't make the list like Experiment Crash, which I really like but kind of narrow and specific towards the activated abilities. So let's start it off here with number 10, which is Plasm Capture. As far as this being a counter spell, I think it's pretty good for what you get for 4 mana, 2 green, 2 blue, kind of specific towards Simic. It is, however, a little bit better than Mana Drain if you ignore the cost to cast it, because what mana you get off of the spell that you countered, it could be whatever combination of colors you need it to be. That being said, the cost to cast this card is still pretty important, and you're probably not going to see this card outside of that many Simic decks because it is specific towards those two colors, but I still think it is one of the most underrated cards in the format. Number 8, we have the new card, Prime Speaker Vannifar from Ravnica Allegiance. I'm not going to lie to you, as a commander, if you build around her in the most competitive way possible, you could just go off and spend a whole turn searching your library for different creatures. That can be a headache to have to deal with. That is no fun to go up against. But if you're going to be practical about it and just say, I'm using her to search like I would with a birthing pod or anything that I'm probably not going to combo with, then I'm completely fine with it. If it's just going to search up whatever utility creatures you need at that moment, Reclamation Sage or an Acidic Slime, then I'm perfectly fine with you using Vannifar. If she's just going to be another birthing pod for you, that's okay, but if you are going to go off and do the combo thing, then you're probably going to end up with the problem that nobody's going to like playing with you, everyone's going to gang up on you, and that's not really what you want to have in Commander anyway. The card itself isn't really creative in design, but it still offers a lot of power for decks, so we at least have that. Number 8, we have Ezuri, Claw of Progress. Very specific commander, but without a doubt one of the most powerful in Simic. The downside is that you're not really going to see him as part of the 99 anywhere else. On the very rare occasion that you actually are going to synergize with small creatures, then I guess so. But for the most part, Ezuri, Claw of Progress makes one of the most intimidating commanders. So you have things like Invisible Stalker, you have Blighted Agent, anything that's small that is very difficult to deal with. You can put a ton of +1/+1 counters on them. With Infect, you can deal lethal pretty easily. However, the situation is kind of similar to Vannifar, where I feel like a lot of people that go up against this deck, they're going to know what you're going to do, because it's usually going to end up being some sort of small Infect creature that's going to get bigger, or some sort of unblockable creature that's going to get bigger. Either that, or you're going to go for the Sage of Hours combo, which is just as infuriating. So I wouldn't recommend going for the obvious combos. If you want to build around these commanders, go for something that doesn't just combo off and win on the spot. But still though, a pretty decent option as a commander. Number 7 is Momir Vig. The advantage that this guy has over the previous two options is that he's pretty versatile. You could have him as a commander, you could throw him in as one of the 99, and you're not going to go wrong. Gives you that flexibility to search your deck, maybe not as efficiently as Prime Speaker Vannifar, but if you're playing a ton of Simic creatures, you're just searching your library for creatures, putting them into your hand. A decent toolbox commander, because you can just search your library for a lot of good utility creatures, which in Simic there's no shortage of. If you want to draw more cards, you can search for a Muldrifter. If you need to get rid of some non-creature permanents, search up your Terastodon. Or if you need another counterspell, you can search up a Mystic Snake. Really cool guy. Not super competitive though, so if you want to go for more of a casual deck, fly under the radar a little bit, I think he's a pretty cool option. Number 6, we have Kiora, Master of the Depths. We don't have a ton of options in Simic for Planeswalkers because they're all kind of weak. Kiora, Master of the Depths, has pretty decent abilities all the way around. Her plus is pretty cool if you have some mana producing creatures, some lands that produce multiple mana, or you just have creatures with good activated abilities. That's pretty sweet. And her minus is just look at the top of your library, get whatever you need. This kind of ability see a ton of play in Commander already, and that's her minus. Her alt is pretty good. I would say it's probably better than the other Kiora's alt where you just get a Kraken each one of your end steps. While that's pretty good, this one is even better in my opinion because you actually get an emblem that allows your creatures to fight other creatures. creatures, so you have some decent removal tacked on there. We have decent abilities here, all three of them. I think it's a sign of a good planeswalker when you have all three abilities that are actually useful in the format. Number 5, we have Thrasios, Triton Hero. This guy sees a ton of play. He is super expensive, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's a pretty good option for competitive EDH, alongside Time to the Weaver, a little deck called Breakfast Hulk. But overall, if you're going for a practical, efficient commander card, Thrasios is really hard to beat. He's a 2-mana creature. You can get him out there pretty early. Really good for control because what you're already going to have is a lot of open mana for your counter spells, your removal spells. When you don't need to do any of those things, you could leave up 8, 12 mana and do this a few times. Any sort of aggressive ramp strategy is just going to make him even better. And being a partner commander, you have the luxury of pairing him up with a Time to the Weaver and playing one of the more competitive decks in the format. But you also have some other partner options as well, so don't forget about all the possible combinations. This guy is pretty cool. If you're going to go for control, you need some sort of engine like this anyway. Really solid option. Number 4, we have Kruphix, God of Horizons. Now, cards that are already staples in the format, Thought Vessel, Reliquary Tower, you see these all over the place, and that's for a good reason. It's very important to keep the card advantage that you have. You don't want to have to discard if you're past your maximum hand size. This gives you no maximum hand size, so you have a Reliquary Tower on a creature already, but that's not why he's good. If unused mana would empty from your mana pool, it just becomes colorless. Think of all of the awesome mana sinks that you have in the format. We have a ton of X-costed spells. We have Blue Sun Zenith, Green Sun Zenith. We have the powerful Genesis Wave, so you can get a ton of cards from your deck. You have the advantage that the gods are just already pretty powerful creatures. They're indestructible enchantments at the very least. This guy, though, is just going to allow you to float a ton of mana for your mana sinks, or allow you to cast your other spells like your Eldrazi's a lot easier. And when you think about the most powerful thing in the format, or just the most powerful thing in Magic as a whole, ramp is up there. It's pretty important. Number 3, we have Prime Speaker Zegana. If you had to ask me what I value more personally in Magic, this is a huge debate because a lot of people are going to say it's mana ramp, and some people might agree with me with card draw. I think if you can draw a ton of cards, you're going to eventually get to your ramp. So with Prime Speaker Zegana, the potential to draw a bunch of cards is there on ETB. If you have a creature with 8 power, you're going to have her come into play with that many counters, and then you're going to draw 9 cards. So on ETB, she's one of the more powerful creatures that you can play in the format just because you could potentially draw your deck out if you have other things, like say a Peer and Toothy that's just going to get bigger. And like most creatures with good ETBs, Deadeye Navigator is dangerous, but just one of those creatures that, if left alone, you know you're going to end up drawing your deck. And even if you don't have any sort of Laboratory Maniac strategy, you're still going to end up with a Prime Speaker Zegana with a ton of +1/+1 counters. So I think for a lot of strategies, she works out really well. For a lot of good creature decks, she's a good way to get some more card draw, so you don't have to rely on things like Muldrift or Solely for your card draw. On ETB alone, she might just be one of the most powerful creatures in the format. Number 2, we have Tatyova, Benthic Druid. Prime Speaker Zegana might offer you a ton of card draw on ETB. Tatyova goes well with land strategies in a similar way in which you're going to be playing something like the Gitrog monster. The whole goal here is just to get a ton of lands into play so you can draw more cards, gain more life, and you have here a pretty efficient engine on a creature. Like Prime Speaker Zegana, I think she's a little bit more flexible. She can fit into a ton of decks because a ton of decks in the format already have some decent mana ramp. You play a land, you draw a card, you gain a life. It's pretty simple, but if left alone, Tatyova can be one of the most powerful commanders in the format. It was really difficult for me personally, but I think that she just barely edges out Prime Speaker Zegana in terms of being flexible. But number 1, I think, is the best card in Simic in the format, and that is Void Slime. Always been a favorite of mine. I love counter spells, and I love versatile counter spells even more. You can counter a spell, activated or triggered ability, which pretty much means counter anything. Being able to counter activated abilities and triggered abilities, that is so powerful. You have so many instances in the game where an ability would trigger, whether it's on casting a spell, whether it's on ETB, whether something triggers at a certain point in the turn, at the beginning of your upkeep, at the beginning of the end step, at the beginning of combat. There's a lot of times where you're going to have a triggered ability happen, and activated abilities can be pretty deadly too. I don't think anybody likes being mind-slavered, so if you could stop that from happening, that's a pretty good card. But overall, though, you have the versatility. At the very worst, you could settle for a 3-mana counterspell. And even though Disallow is a better version of this because it's mono blue, if I'm in Simic, I'm probably going to end up playing both of them anyway because they're fantastic cards. And whenever you have versatile answers, you're more likely to stay in the game longer. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this top 10 list. These are my 10 favorite Simic cards in the format. Let me know what you think about the Simic Guild. You guys have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video.